Hello, and thank you for joining us. The Federal Reserve has left interest rates unchanged for the fifth time in a row. The announcement came after the Fed met for its two-day policy meeting in Washington, and it won't be meeting again until mid-September. Earlier today, Chair Jerome Powell spoke about the decision.
Our obligation is to keep longer-term inflation expectations well anchored and to prevent a one-time increase in the price level from becoming an ongoing inflation problem. For the time being, we're well positioned to learn more about the likely course of the economy and the evolving balance of risks before adjusting our policy stance.
President Trump has repeatedly urged the Fed to lower rates. He's also accused Powell of being too hesitant. At the White House today, the president was asked about the Fed's concerns that cutting interest rates too soon could lead to higher prices.
Well, if that happens, then we just raise them. What you do is you lower them, and let's see if there's inflation. Right now, there's no inflation. Everybody thought there would be. All we have is billions of dollars of cash pouring into our country.
The president did, however, celebrate the new GDP numbers. The Commerce Department says the U.S. economy grew at an annual rate of 3% in the second quarter of this year. Also in Washington today, the National Transportation Safety Board kicked off public hearings on January's deadly midair collision near Reagan National Airport. 67 people were killed when an Army helicopter collided with a passenger jet. And overnight, a record-breaking earthquake off the coast of Russia triggered tsunami waves from Japan to California. But for such a powerful earthquake, there appears to be little damage. But we want to begin with CBS News team coverage on today's economic news. Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady is here with me on set, and White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi is on the North Lawn. Kelly, I want to start with you on those interest rates today. Why hold steady for a fifth time in a row? Wait and see, more wait and see?
Apparently, I think a lot of people are asking that question, including the president, as you alluded to. From Fed Chair Powell's comments, it's tariffs. They want to be able to see what kind of an impact these tariffs are going to have. And you heard him say during the press conference, we're sort of seeing a delayed effect. Yes, these went into effect a couple of months ago, but then you start to see it flow through the data a couple of months down the line. I will note, though, two people did want rate cuts, and you might see more of that.
We saw two votes. We haven't seen this in decades. This happened in decades.
That's right.
Why do you think this happened? These are both Trump appointees. Does that factor into that decision, that vote?
Well, Powell was a Trump appointee, too.
Exactly.
So I think probably not, but I think it's just a different perspective on what they need to see for rate cuts. And he did share that there was a good debate and, you had different camps and they made good arguments, but he and the rest of the board just needed to see more data.
Now, I want to talk about GDP growth. That 3% number we got was better than expected. And of course, that's a good headline number. But as you dig beyond that data, what did it actually say?
A lot of noise about tariffs. So we got a 3% increase. That was great. The president is very right to celebrate that. And that's compared to a 0.5% decrease in terms of how the economy was growing in the first 3 months of the year. But it decreased because you had companies front running all of these goods, getting all of those goods ahead of the tariff deadline. And for those at home, when you calculate GDP, imports count against it. It gets subtracted in the calculation. So if you've got a really big import number, you could have that negative number. Then the second quarter came along, tariffs took effect, and you saw a decrease in imports. And so when you look at the first 6 months of the year together, GDP actually grew 1.2%. That's sort of a more normalized way of looking things without these big swings.
All right. We also, we keep hearing this word uncertainty when it comes to the market. We've got, sort of the first 6 months of the Trump presidency in the bag here. As you look ahead, what is the state of the U.S. economy right now? Are we in a stable place? Like, how would you judge it?
I would say that we are in a stable place that is slowing down. And you are seeing some of that in the labor market. You're seeing some of that in consumer spending. And I have to remind everyone at home, these numbers that we talk about, they're top line. And then you break them down into different income segments. And that lower income consumer wouldn't agree with my assessment of the economy. They say, hey, we are really struggling. But I think going back to your point about uncertainty, we are getting more certainty with trade deals. But what that certainty is telling us is that prices could be higher for longer because you have numbers like 25% tariffs.
We're starting to see more and more companies come out and say we might be raising our prices in the coming days and weeks and months. Kelly O'Grady, thank you so much. CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi is joining us now. Olivia, how's the White House reacting to the Fed's decision? What's the vibe and energy there right now?
Well, Joe Ling, no response yet from this White House, no statement. We're watching True Social for any reaction from the president. He was a little preoccupied this afternoon with an event he was hosting with Dr. Oz and Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. So we didn't get to ask him his response about this just yet. But you can imagine, given the amount of pressure that this White House has been putting on Jerome Powell to cut rates, that the president will not be happy. He even kind of previewed this earlier when he was at a bill signing, and he said he hopes he cuts rates, but he's hearing that Jerome Powell probably wouldn't. But the president said he's expecting a rate cut in September. Of course, this all comes as this White House and President Trump has put pressure to cut rates, but also pressure for Powell to step aside. So the White House still saying that Powell is going to serve out his term through May of next year, but they are certainly eager and chomping at the bit to get someone in there come May of next year that would be more eager to cut rates where the economy is at right now.
Well, I want to talk about trade, the other big piece of this week's story. The president today threatened 25% tariffs on imports from India, and that includes an additional penalty for trading with Russia. What's the strategy behind this?
Well, we got to broaden that out just a little bit, specifically on the India question, because the president said they're our friend, they're a close ally of ours. But the part about Russia is what's interesting, because we know that Russia is engaged in this over 3-year-long war in Ukraine, and the president has been working to try to get some sort of ceasefire deal on the table, putting that maximum pressure on Russia that he can. And part of that pressure also includes a potential new sanctions bill that wouldn't sanction just Russia, but people who buy energy from them. And one of those countries that do buy energy from Russia is India. So meanwhile, they're a partner of ours, they're an ally of ours, but they're also buying Russian energy. So the president calling that out today as part of this effort to get India to the table to make a trade deal with the United States with just 2 days left on that August 1st deadline. So it is important to just view it in that context. But bottom line is that even though this is one of our largest trading partners, the president is clearly a little miffed and annoyed at the trade barriers that they have in place for U.S. products and also them buying Russian energy. Today was a little bit of a bottom line circumstance from this White House saying you need to come to the table and make an agreement with us soon.
The president also signed an executive order to raise tariffs on Brazilian imports to 50%. Why such a high number there? What's the tactic?
Well, also context there, the former president of Brazil, Bolsonaro, is a close ally of the president's, of President Trump's, and he is under investigation in Brazil for trying to overturn their election. So the president has a bit of a a frosty relationship with their current president, Lula da Silva, in Brazil. And part of the reason why there's these high tariffs is because of the investigation into their former president, who's an ally of President Trump. So today we know that President Trump signed an executive order that has a 40% tariff on Brazil. That's in addition to a 10% tariff that was also put on them. And because of that, it's now a 50% tariff. And they're citing human rights concerns as the reason why they're putting those tariffs on.
A lot of news today. Olivia Rinaldi, thank you.